Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call to order this Tuesday, October 22nd meeting of the Pierce County Council. The time is 3:02 p.m. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Campbell.
Here.
Councilmember Kruger.
Here.
Councilmember Denson.
Here.
Councilmember Herrera.
Here.
Councilmember Hitchin.
Here.
Councilmember Morell.
Here.
Councilmember Mello.
Here.
You have 7 members present.
We have all 7 members present and a quorum. Item number 3 is our Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, our moment of silence, and our land acknowledgement. Today's moment of silence is dedicated to the lives of Lieutenant Commander Lindsay P. Evans and Lieutenant Serena N. Williman. Evans and Williman lost their lives last week when their jet crashed near Mount Rainier. Evans was a naval flight officer who was awarded 2 single action air medals and 3 strike flight air medals. Williman was a senior first tour naval aviator with 3 strike flight air medals. We deeply thank Evans and Williman for their many sacrifices and their service to our country. Our thoughts are with their loved ones. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, followed by a moment of silence dedicated to the lives of Lieutenant Commander Lindsay P. Evans and Lieutenant Serena N. Williman, and then the land acknowledgement. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our land acknowledgement is that we acknowledge that we are on the traditional homelands of the Coast Salish tribes. Coast Salish people have lived on and stewarded these lands since time immemorial, and they continue to do so today. We recognize that this land acknowledgement is but one small step toward true allyship, and we commit to uplifting the voices, the experiences, and the histories of the indigenous people of this land. We're now at Section 4, approval of our agenda. Are there any objections to approving today's agenda as presented? Seeing no objection, the agenda is approved. On today's council agenda, there will be multiple opportunities for public comment. On the consent agenda, you may provide comment on any final action item. This does not include items placed on the consent agenda for introduction or scheduling. So on today's consent agenda, we have 1 set of minutes for approval and 3 appointment resolutions for final hearing that are subject to public comment. Then under Section 8 of the agenda, we will take public comment on each resolution individually. And finally, under Community Forum, there will be an opportunity to address the Council on any topic that is not on the agenda for final action. For information on the rules for public participation, please review the bottom of page 1 of today's agenda. We're now at Section 5, our consent agenda. Does any member wish to pull any item from our consent agenda?
Sure.
Vice Chair Campbell.
Let me check with Mr. Dominique. Do we have just the one person?
Yes, we still just have the one person in chambers. I'm not seeing any appointees on.
Okay. I move approval of the consent agenda as amended, moving item C to B to section number 8.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we adopt the consent agenda with the amendment of moving item C to B to section 8 of today's agenda. This is a public hearing on the remaining final action items on today's consent agenda. Any member of the public wish to provide comment on the remaining items on our consent agenda? Starting here in council chambers, please come to the podium, state your name for the record if you wish to do so. We're on our consent agenda. Mr. Dominique, anybody in the Zoom room?
For any members online that would like to provide comment on any final action items on today's consent agenda, please press the raise hand icon in Zoom or *9 on your telephone keypad. There are no hands at this time, Chair.
Seeing no hands, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the council. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll on the consent agenda?
Councilmember Cruver,
Aye.
Councilmember Denson,
Aye.
Councilmember Herrera,
Aye.
Councilmember Hitchin,
Aye.
Councilmember Morel,
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell,
Aye.
Councilmember Mello.
Aye.
The result of the roll call vote is 7 ayes and
On a vote of 7 ayes and 0 nays, the consent agenda is adopted. At Section 6, messages from the executive and other county elected officials, we have one. There's a message from the executive transmitting the following ordinances which were approved and signed on October 14th, 2024. They included Ordinance 2024-549S. This was an ordinance of the Pierce County Council granting a non-exclusive franchise to the city of Bonnie Lake for the location of water lines on public rights-of-way. The executive also signed Ordinance 2024-551S. This was an ordinance of the Pierce County Council granting a non-exclusive franchise to the Cayuga Beach water system for location of water lines on certain public rights-of-way. Under Section 7, proclamations, recognitions, awards, and presentations, there are none today. So coming back to an item that we removed from our consent agenda so we could meet this appointee, we have Resolution 2024-230 before us. Councilmember Denson for a motion.
Thank you, Chair. I move Resolution 2024-230.
Second. It's been properly moved and seconded that we adopt Resolution 2024-230. Madam Clerk, will you please read the title into the record?
Proposal number R 2024-230, a resolution of the Pierce County Council confirming the appointment of one new member, Bruce Murray, to the Pierce County Parks and Recreation Citizens Advisory Board.
Thank you. Mr. Murray, thank you for being with us and your willingness to serve. We're grateful that you're here in person. We would invite you to the podium, and we would just ask you to simply introduce yourself, share why you wish to serve. We do have your written background material that was prepared for the appointment, but thank you again for being here to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Chairman Mello. My name is Bruce Murray. I was born and raised in Tacoma. My wife and I moved to the Key Peninsula in 2003. And since 2007, I have served as a volunteer with Pierce County Parks, primarily doing maintenance work. So a few weeks ago, while doing a maintenance project out on the Purdy Spit, Robin Denson jumped in and joined us and encouraged me to apply for the open position on the Citizens Advisory Board for Parks. And I hadn't really given it any consideration, but I realized it fell in line with the kinds of things I really enjoy, as well as having a focus on maintenance work, volunteer work over the last many years. My prior history with my MBA in accounting from the University of Washington and serving in financial management capacities in private industry, I feel I can bring some useful perspective to the Parks Advisory Board. I'm going to have a lot to learn, but I look forward to helping out.
Thank you for your already volunteer work. This is what happens when you are friends with Councilmember Denson. She's not afraid to ask people to do important things. So thank you. Do any members have any questions for Mr. Murray before we open up for a public hearing? Councilmember Denson.
I was just going to go ahead and make some comments. I'm very grateful to Mr. Murray for stepping up. He downplayed a little bit of his maintenance work. He has waging a personal war against Japanese knotweed on the Purdy Spit, and we've been out there. I've been out there a couple times, and I'm sure he's been out there a lot more, pulling up, cutting the knotweed, and then hauling it up to the road, to the Highway 302 there. And I'll do a shout out to WASDOT, which has been really great about picking up all of the debris. So it's looking really good. It's good for our environment. Mr. Murray's a long time advocate for the environment and for parks, and I know he's already planning on visiting all our county parks and is going to do a really thoughtful job to make sure that we are putting parks in the right places and the right things in the right parks, and making sure that the citizens have all the recreation and natural environment opportunities that we owe them. So thank you, Mr. Murray.
And thank you for your sponsorship, Robin.
That Japanese knotweed is something else. It grows by rhizome, so it's not easy to get
grows
at.
fast.
You got to be very determined to want to get at that invasive
It's a
species.
long-term effort.
Any other questions for Mr. Murray? I don't see any. We have we do take a public hearing on all final action items, so we're going to open this up for a public hearing on this final action item to appoint Mr. Murray to the Pierce County Parks and Recreation Citizens Advisory Board. Any member of the public wish to provide comment here in chambers? Not seeing anybody wanting to push Mr. Murray out of the way at that podium. Mr. Dominique, anybody in our Zoom room?
For any member of the public that would like to provide comment on proposal number R 2024-230, please press the raised hand icon in Zoom or *9 on your telephone keypad. And there are no hands at this time, Chair.
With no hands, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the council. Are there final remarks by any council members? Councilmember Morrell.
I just couldn't resist, Mr. Murray. I got this tax issue that I was wondering if you could. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Your skills will just really challenge the staff at Parks. I imagine once you figure out how to read the budget, that you will have some great questions to ask them. And, I, for one, appreciate that professional and your experience in looking at budgets, not just, what do we call that? Knotweed?
Japanese knotweed?
Knotweed, yeah. So, anyway, thank you very much for stepping forward. And I know it's difficult to say no to certain people. So.
Thank you. Any other remarks? Well, thank you for your many ways that you already volunteer. Your experience and background is going to add a lot of value to our pretty amazing park system. So thank you for your willingness to serve.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll on Resolution 2024-230?
Councilmember Denson.
Aye.
Councilmember Herrera.
Aye.
Councilmember Hitchin.
Aye.
Councilmember Morrell.
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell.
Aye.
Councilmember Krueger.
Aye.
Councilmember Mello.
Aye.
The result of the roll call vote is 7 ayes and 0 nays.
On a vote of 7 ayes and 0 nays, the resolution is adopted. Congratulations. Thank you again. We're at Resolution 2024-211. Councilmember Krueger for a motion, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move for approval, Resolution 2024-211.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we adopt Resolution 2024-211. Madam Clerk, please read the title.
Proposal number R 2024-211, a resolution of the Pierce County Council approving the 2025 Spanaway Lake Management District Annual Work Plan.
Thank you. Mr. Swanson to brief the council.
Thank you, Chair Mello and members of the council. Beginning on page 39 of your packet is the annual resolution to approve the work plan for the Spanaway Lake Management District. In 2021, council formed the Spanaway Lake Management District, authorized a per parcel charge of $4 per foot of lake frontage, which is limited to $1,500 per year and is reviewed annually. Also created the Citizens Advisory Board and tasked Planning and Public Works with the responsibility of operating the district. We should also note that at that time, Council included a 5-year sunset provision and an annual requirement that the work plan be approved. And that annual requirement is the resolution before us this afternoon. The proposed 2025 work plan covers 5 main areas. The first being Planning and Public Works staff will continue to support the CAB or the Citizens Advisory Board. The work plan continues the work of both the second main area, which is Class C noxious vegetation management, and the third being phosphorus and cyanobacteria control. The fourth main area, the work plan allocates resources to implementing the recommendations of the Citizens Advisory Board, which include addressing the sources of upstream phosphorus, monitoring water quality treatment and collecting data, installation of a boat washing station, and increasing public communication and engagement. And then finally, the fifth main area of the work plan is looking at that $4 per foot of frontage annual assessment. And this 2025 work plan recommends no change to that $4 figure. Both an equity analysis and a fiscal analysis have been completed and are included in your packet. The fiscal note does list that there is no or de minimis impact, but I would mention that in the 2024 and 2025 budget, council made $250,000 in the swim fund available for work plan implementation for the district. And that is in addition to the nearly $100,000 that's annually generated from that $4 assessment. And then also funding is available through any grants that the district may receive that they apply for. A public hearing was held at the October 8th Economic and Infrastructure Development Committee where the proposal was forwarded with a due pass recommendation. Also included on your packet, this is following up on the discussion that occurred at Economic and Infrastructure Development. Included in your packet on pages 106 through 113, there's a two-part email from Mr. Mel Olson, who serves on the Citizens Advisory Board. And this is, again, following testimony he had given at EIDC, he has submitted via email what he's called a minority report from the Citizens Advisory Board, which was not previously included at committee. And again, that's included in your packet at pages 106 and 103. It's two emails, but they're together. With that, Mr. Chair, we do have Brianne Blackburn and I believe Austin Jennings from Surface Water Management staff, and council staff are available to answer any questions that members may have.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson. Ms. Blackburn, anything to add, or Mr. Jennings, anything to add on behalf of the Planning and Public Works Department, Surface Water Management Division?
I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any specific questions, but nothing to add at this time.
Do any council members have any questions before we open up for a public hearing? We'll begin with Councilmember Hitchin.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask Ms. Blackburn and Mr. Jennings, have we applied for any grants that are kind of out there in the, we don't know the results of those yet? Are there any down the pipeline that you're aware of?
We don't have any active grant applications out. We recently secured a grant from proviso from Department of Ecology, and we are working on spending those funds currently.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Morell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is, have we started treating the lake?
In 2024, we did a number of treatments on Spanaway Lake, consistent with our work plan. We had 2 treatments for noxious weeds, both curly leaf pondweed and fragrant water lily. And we also had 2 different treatments targeting the algae in Spanaway Lake. We did one phosphorus inactivation treatment in July or in August, and then due to the algae bloom that was happening on Spanaway Lake this year, we also did an algicide treatment to try to limit the extent and duration of that algae bloom.
Okay, and then just follow-up question of the treatment that you did do. I mean, are you seeing any success off any of those treatments?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll start back at the top with the vegetation treatments. Those have both so far been very successful. The fragrant water lily, we're treating about 1/3 of the larger populations at a time to limit the impacts to the dissolved oxygen in the lake, and those have been very successful. Curly leaf pondweed, this was the first year we treated that, and our fall survey showed only two small populations at that time, so we saw a significant decrease in that invasive plant as well. The lanthanum or phosphorus inactivation treatment, phosphorus sequestration treatment, is really geared towards decreasing the available phosphorus in the lake for next season. What we did see after that treatment was a reduction at the bottom sediments of, or the bottom water of phosphorus across the entire lake. So what we're hoping to see next year is less phosphorus available for the algae bloom, for the algae to bloom next year. The algicide treatment, that treatment is really a reactionary treatment to the current bloom that we were seeing, which was a very substantial bloom, both in its toxicity and it was very widespread. It was a large bloom. We did see a response from the algae in certain parts of the lake. You can see visible reduction. We are seeing a decrease at this point in the toxicity, but it wasn't what I would say a wild success across the entire lake. There were a lot of places that still saw substantial bloom, and really that algicide treatment is a Band-Aid. It's only going to impact the bloom for a limited amount of time, a couple of days up to a couple of weeks. So that was never a long-term solution. The goal was to reduce that bloom out of trying to keep people and animals safe.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, Ms. Blackburn and Mr. Jennings, I did not get a chance to watch the Economic and Infrastructure Development Committee meeting where you presented to that committee. So apologize for that. My question is, what water quality measures is our county surface water management division tracking on a longitudinal basis for this lake in particular, to be clear?
Thank you. For Spanaway Lake, we have been collecting a lot of data on Spanaway Lake over the years. I know particularly for this season, this study, we had a number of in-lake monitoring goals, including temperature and dissolved oxygen profiles at 3 different areas in the lake. So we're collecting both surface and bottom parameters, as well as throughout the water column, and that's really to help us understand what's happening in the lake itself. We also have ambient water quality monitoring stations on the inlet and outlet of Spanaway Lake, and that's ongoing data collection that in some cases we've been collecting for more than a decade. So that helps us both track the nutrients, temperature, and flows across both what's going into the lake, throughout the lake, and what's coming out. I'll ask Austin to add to the specifics of the different parameters, water quality parameters across all of our stations.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. I think, for the grab samples, the parameters that we're grabbing and having analyzed by a lab, the primary constituent of concern really is phosphorus. Phosphorus is kind of the least available nutrient for these harmful algal blooms in the lake, and so where that is abundant, algae also tend to be abundant. Everything else is kind of available in excess, and so really the critical control is monitoring and controlling that phosphorus. And so those surface and benthic grab samples that we collected along with the depth profiling really were aimed at kind of gauging how much nutrient was available for the harmful algae in the lake. So primarily phosphorus in the form of total phosphorus and soluble reactive, which is the bioavailable phosphorus, but also in, I think, total LL nitrogen and nitrates as well. So
how are we doing in that regard? Are we trending in the right direction? I know it's early, right? The Lake Management District is actually really new. So we haven't had a lot of time to apply resources to tackle some problems. But is there any early indication about trends?
We don't have a lot in terms of trend, just because we do have just the one treatment event that we've done. But the indication pre and post treatment is that the soluble reactive phosphorus was reduced, especially in that deeper area where the internal loading is taking place. And so I think what we saw was from 75 down to about 35, which puts us kind of back in the range of a mesotrophic lake, which would be a kind of healthy lake target. The eutrophic range starts when you get into the upper 40s, 50s, and we've seen a reduction down below that line. And so as far as gauging the success of this treatment, I would say, yes, we were successful in targeting soluble reactive phosphorus, but having subsequent treatments in subsequent years will give us a better sense of how we're trending in that direction. And I think an important thing to note is that these chemical treatments really are kind of a stopgap measure until we can get a more permanent capital solution in the lake. And so they're never really intended to provide relief long-term for the lake. They are at best, a couple of years worth of relief in reducing that phosphorus. But until we can address the low oxygen issue in the bottom of the lake, we're going to continue to see that phosphorus re-released from the sediments on an annual basis.
Thank you. Important reminder. Thank you. Any other questions? Not seeing any. This is a public hearing on approving the Spanaway Lake Management District Annual Work Plan. Any member of the public wish to provide comment? We'll welcome you to come to the podium, state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes to make your remarks. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. My name's Penny Cooper Howard, and good afternoon. Thank you for letting me speak. Like I said, my name's Penny Howard, and I currently serve as the chairman of the Spanaway Lake Citizens Advisory Board. I want to speak in support of the plan that we have established. We knew that it would be a process to find the right solutions for improving water quality in the lake. That being said, I believe that we are on the right track. To go along with what Austin said, because it's a 5-year plan and we're 3 years into it now, that is a concern to all of us that we need to be seeing these results, and I'm glad that we got some results this summer. But this past summer, our plan for cyanobacteria management wasn't implemented in the recommended timeline. So we're hopeful that we're going to see the cumulative benefits when next summer's treatments happen, but it's imperative that they happen in the prescribed timeline. Vegetation treatments have been effective, but again could provide even better results if applied in the prescribed timeline. There's also a need to look at other invasive plant removal because we haven't been addressing that, and it causes some safety concerns. Again, a majority of the board support this plan and want to continue on the prescribed path. We realize that we may have to adapt the plan as the implementation happens to ensure that optimal results will occur. We'd like to thank Surface Water Management for their continued support and expertise in this endeavor. We would also like to thank Amy Kruger and the council for your support. I also have a letter to read because I'm on the board for the Friends of Spanaway Lake, and I was asked to read this in their regards for them. So a letter was sent to the Deer County Executive and the Pierce County Council members. We're writing regarding the Spanaway Lake Management District 2024 work plan. Friends of Spanaway Lake has been the watchdog for water quality in the lake and advocated for the formation of the Lake Management District to help towards improving the water. The current process of steps through approvals is not working. The approvals and permitting have occurred too late to be effective. Because we already had a bloom by the time the approved lanthanum treatment was applied, there was very little phosphorus left in the water column to be treated. It is recommended to do an algicide treatment before lanthanum if a bloom is present. An algicide treatment was done, but after the lanthanum treatment, and not very effective, as Austin and Brianne said. Permits were submitted to the Department of Ecology on January 1, 2024. They took a little over 30 days to respond, which is within the timeline. Permits then went to the Department of State Fish and Wildlife. They held the permits until June 2024. They reached the county executive for signature late June, early August, and the desired time for treatment would have been in late May or June. So that's the issue, the timing. We need a process where the various county state agencies required to approve any part of the process work together to make sure the approvals can happen ahead of the desired treatment times. We have a county shoreline exemption right now for 5 years that started in 2022. will need renewal of state permits from Ecology and Fish and Wildlife for 2025. This year, an advisory was issued on August 15th by the Health Department for a harmful algae bloom. On August 20th, the lake was closed. That's the day the treatment happened. An algicide was applied on August 29th, and the closure was lifted in October, but we're still under an extreme caution as the bloom is still present. It's my hope that by making everyone aware of what occurred this year, we can all work together to make sure the 2025 plan will be implemented as recommended in a timely manner. If we can't get the timing right, we're not being good stewards of our money, and I'm afraid we will lose the support of the lakefront owners that support the Lake Management District. And it's signed by all of the board members of Friends of Spanaway Lake.
Thank you. If you want to submit the letter to our clerk for the record, we would love to accept it. Just acknowledging that definitely allowed that to go over because you are a official advisory group to the council. So, and we take your input and advice very seriously. So we wanted to hear that read into the record. Thank you very much. Thank you. Anyone else wish to provide comment? Please state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to make your remarks. Thank you for being here.
Good afternoon. I'm Melvin Olison. I'm also a member of the Citizens Advisory Board. In your packets, you will see two-page documents addressing issues that we find in the minority report to what is going on with the Lake Management District. These are not solely my opinion, and I apologize for the lateness in the delivery, but I've been in Alberta working with 8 other members of the Lake area to try to make these comments together. There's no way I can even start to cover them in 3 minutes. But basically what we're asking is that this council temporarily defer approving the plan until they've had time to look at the minority report and have the surface water management or the appropriate people respond to the criticisms. Several of them are addressed at the actual treatment process, which Ms. Howard just commented on. Others address issues such as lack of strategy planning, wasteful expenditures on experimental equipment that the surface water management has specifically told us they will not do experiments, and yet they're planning on studying and installing an oxygen saturation technology device at $1.4 million apiece, probably 4 of them. These units were going to be installed in the north end of the lake, which I happen to also be the person in charge of the volunteers for the algae watch for the Tacoma-Pierce County Health Department. That's not where the problem is. The problem is in the south end of the lake where we have substantial inflows of groundwater, highly polluted from septic systems, stormwater systems, you name it. They've come in. The strategy has no idea what to do with that. In fact, the strategy doesn't even acknowledge it's a lake plan. It's a cyanobacteria plan. It doesn't address things like there is some discussion of lily pads, but we have lost 2 people, we're fairly sure, to weeds and grass. One paddleboarder who fell off and got entangled, another man who had to dive under his boat to get clear of the grass and debris off, and something happened. He must have got knocked out and he drowned. We have others we suspect maybe have drowned, and yet surface water management is not even considering looking at this stuff. That's not of interest to them. There is no strategy. There is no lake management plan. There's a cyanobacteria plan, a little bit of a lily pad plan, and basically nothing else. It is a total fail. And especially this oxygen saturation technology. There was a conference held in Portland 3 weeks ago, Penny, something like that, in which that was presented. It has not been proven to be effective in any of the 4 to 5 places that has actually been used. So I'm asking you to defer approving the plan until you can read the minority report. And also there is a supplemental report in there talking about the suppression of the Citizens Advisory Board by the use of the Open Meetings Act and the way that they have scheduled it in such a way as we can't even have committee meetings. We have our 4 formal meetings, which are 2 hours long, most of which is eaten up by bureaucracy. They are done at a time when we can't hardly get anybody in because they're done between 5 and 7. And when I asked several times if we could have three-person committees, so we don't have a four-person quorum, if I could have three-person committees, Surface Water Management absolutely refused us. Therefore, the board, and the board members are all very great people. I'm the only one that's technical. I have a degree in biology, 2 certifications in engineering, a naval engineering, and I worked for a company for 25 years dealing with water issues.
Thank you.
So I see that we have a big problem that's not being addressed, and if we just approve this plan, we're just wasting more money down the line and possibly obligating us to multi-million-dollar systems that are not proven.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for your input. Mr. Dom, there's no other member of the public here in council chambers. Mr. Dominique, anybody in our Zoom room?
For any member of the public that'd like to provide comment on proposal number R 2024-211, please press the raise hand icon in Zoom or *9 on your telephone keypad. And we have 2 hands at this time. We have username HP. Please state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
If you're talking to me with HT, I don't understand. I'm Terry Hurd. Am I getting through to you?
We can hear you, Terry.
All right. DT Hurd, I can respond to that better than whatever you were trying to.
It's what we see on the Zoom screen. It says HP in front of us. Go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Odd. Okay, I'm a lifelong resident of the area. When I had a bicycle and I was old enough, I used Spanaway Lake. I swam in it, and as I got older, we fished, we went boating, we had a good time in all parts of the lake. Now, to get to the real problem, are there any shallow wells in the development of the septic tank area east of the lake, surrounding the lake, that have no sewer, that are being studied for the source of this chemical contaminants that are being put in? I haven't heard of any, and yet if you're going to address an issue, don't address the symptom without understanding where the symptom is coming from. Will your treatment allow the full use of the lake? Will it become a healthy lake again? Again, I have to stress, if you're not looking at the source of the problem, you're treating a symptom, and it's very the population that I spoke to doesn't like the fact that they can't go swimming, they can't go fishing, and other things on the lake that they surround. And the other thing I keep coming up, this is a surface water management problem. Those funds that we have all been forced to put into should have been used to handle things like putting a sewer in to stop the contaminants, and not the parking lot of Spanaway just for a beautification for Sprinkler. We have a limited amount of money and a limited amount of time for all of us to look at the health of the lake, because it has a long history of being used, a long history. If you ever read The Shade of the Mountain, you'll see that this lake was one of those that was used by a lot of wealthy people on a train track that ran out there. Please go back and look at the fact that your plan that you have is only a Band-Aid, a temporary Band-Aid at best. It's not looking at what the lake needs. When the water became undrinkable on the rest of the Parkland-Spanaway area, sewers were forced in on people, whether they had a proper problem or any issues with the water. But you've ignored the property from Pacific Avenue to Spanaway Lake and around the golf course. I don't hold that against them. It's one of the few we have left. Please look at the fact of expanding your study to say where the problem is coming from and what a good solution would be. And I thank the gentleman who was there earlier. I've spoke with him before at other meetings. Good day.
Thank you. Hurd.
Next, we have Scott. Please state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
My name is Scott Munson. I'm Vice Chair for the Citizens Advisory Board for the Lake Management District. I'm also a past board member for Friends of Spanaway Lake. I'd like to thank the County Council and Stormwater Management for their support of the Lake Management District in the first 3 years. I urge the board to approve this 2025 plan because I think we're on the right track. It's a dynamic environment. We knew that adaptive management was going to be a key piece of learning the lake and how to treat it. And I think it's too new to discredit the Lake Management District or Stormwater Management or the 2 qualified limnologists who developed the plan. And I would point out that some that are objecting to the plan, they're not certified limnologists, and this plan was developed by certified limnologists. So I think Friends of Spanaway Lake is doing a great job as the watchdog for Spanaway Lake, and I think that we've got to go full speed ahead on this plan in order to get it done. It's going to take the entire 5 years to get results for this lake, and I think we're 3 years in. But please approve this plan. I'd like to just a call out to Brianne and Austin and Tom. They are dedicated partners with the Citizens Advisory Board and have gone above and beyond in trying to help us get this lake cleaned up. So very grateful to them, and also very grateful to the support that we've gotten from the County Council and from the County Executive. I think everyone recognizes that Spanaway Lake is really a crown jewel for Pierce County, and we need to get it right because so many people use this lake. Not just the people that live on the lake, but people that can't afford to live on the lake utilize the regional park. And so with what they're doing at Sprinker and Breezeman and the golf course, I just would encourage the county to stay steadfast on the plan and approve it. So thank you all very much.
Thank you for being with us. Thank you for being with us.
You're welcome.
Is it appropriate for me to comment now?
I'm sorry. Thank you. Our rules are that everyone gets one time.
That's fine.
Thank you for understanding. Anyone else, Mr. Dominique?
I am not seeing any more hands at this time, Chair.
With no other hands, we're going to close the public hearing, bring it back to the council. There are final remarks by council members. Vice Chair Campbell.
Thank you. I have probably a question, more of a remark. Mr. Swanson or anyone else, what is the council's deadline to get this passed? Or if someone online knows.
The deadline to pass it would be for them to access funding to implement the plan as of January 1st of 2025. Without an approved plan, the department doesn't have authority to access funds for those purposes under the ordinance that created the district.
Okay.
So it's beginning of it's a really long way
not
of saying
today.
the beginning of the year.
Okay, not today. Thank you. With that, I want to thank everyone in the public comment coming forward, raising concerns, issues, other things to look at. I would look to the sponsor, Councilmember Krueger. I don't know if you want to look more into any of this. I'd be willing to support you holding it over. I'll follow your lead on how you want to move forward with this project in your district.
Thank you. Before I turn to Councilmember Krueger, Mr. Jennings, I saw you had your hand up to try to also answer Vice Chair Campbell's question. Do you want to add to the response that Mr. Swanson gave?
Sure. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add quickly that one of the other elements of this is the assessment, and the Assessor Treasurer's Office does request that we have in the resolution approving the work plan, which includes the rates and charges to them by November 30th so that they can adequately prepare those assessments for 2025. So there is some wiggle room available on that date, but anything beyond that, and they start to have to kind of hustle to move things along on the billing front.
Thanks for adding that. Councilmember Krueger.
Thank you, Chair. And that's one of the things in this job where you have he said, she said, and the different dynamics that are in this project. And I will say that all the years that I have been working with the district, they are the most dedicated people that live there and really care and want this to work out. And as I have followed the lead of many, I've been very impressed with the results of what they say and how it gets incorporated into this. There's no exact science, and I appreciate what Mr. Munson had said about it being adaptive management. And I don't see how delaying this is going to make a difference in the long run, because it being adaptive, we learn as we go, and this gives us our starting point. And if there is something crazy in it, we can make those changes. And so I would urge a yes vote and I to go ahead and get this plan going, and we'll just keep working through it. As it said, it's a new thing in the First Lake Management District, and we need to give it the full time to work it.
You want to move forward today, Councilmember Cruver?
I'm sorry. Yes.
You want to move forward today?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Any other remarks? Ms. Blackburn, Mr. Jennings, you and the consultants that you work with are our subject matter experts. I've heard over many, many, many years, we know full well that the inputs into the lake are causing the water quality problems. We know that's not new, right? We know that there are stormwater issues, runoff from our roadways, lawns, homes, roofs. All those pollutants get captured when it rains, heads to the lake, causes water quality problems. We know that there are other effluent issues from wastewater, failing septic systems, other human waste, animal waste issues. That is not new. And so can you maybe just say a little bit more, confirm that and say a little bit more about how we get upstream to those major pollutants that are contributing to the water quality issues to begin with. We know that the dollars that are generated through the Lake Management District, I don't think they're enough to get at the major capital improvements, but maybe I'm wrong, that are needed to put sewer in, change out septic systems, do some water quality capture from the stormwater that's flowing into the lake from our lawns, our roofs, our roadways. So can you say more about the major sources of pollution and how we stop throwing good money after bad and get at the inputs?
Sure. I'll add a couple of details here to this conversation. One thing that was brought up in a number of the comments was the septic systems around the lake, and that is something we're working with the health department to address for an on-site septic and maintenance program, looking at the over 6,000 septic systems in the broader area and bringing those into compliance where we can. The data does point to phosphorus in the sediments and internal cycling within the natural turnover that the lake experiences as our primary nutrient issue in the lake. And so I think while addressing those septic systems is a really important long-term solution, it's not going to solve the problem overnight. So I think we're moving that forward, and you'll see in the plan that's part of our plan for 2025 is to work with the health department on addressing the septic needs. Austin, do you want to add more to the pollution sources beyond just the internal cycling?
Sure. Yeah, I would add, like stormwater has been kind of mentioned a few times as one of the potential sources. We actually, during the last NPDES stormwater permit cycle, went through a comprehensive modeling effort for the entire Spanaway Basin, groundwater modeling, surface water modeling. It was an HSPF mod flow thing we worked with Brown and Caldwell on. And surprisingly, because of the highly infiltrative soils we have in that area, stormwater runoff actually accounts for less than 2% of the annual water budget for that lake. And so that's a surprisingly small margin for stormwater, considering what we would see in comparably sized watersheds in other areas. And so as it turns out, the stormwater that we are managing does tend to be a fairly minor source in this particular watershed. Spanaway is unique in its highly infiltrative soils. There is one potential project, our last remaining outfall up in the Military Road Basin, which has been identified as a potential retrofit project. It wouldn't likely have any impact on water quality within Spanaway Lake because it is downstream at Military Road. But that was really kind of the one opportunity we had to improve stormwater treatment in that area. So we are fortunate working from that position, but as Brianne mentioned, the legacy of on-site septic systems, close to 6,000 of them upstream in the watershed, have contributed in low amounts over time to a big kind of storage volume of phosphorus that's available in the lake. That phosphorus gets bound up in the sediment when oxygen is present. The challenge is that over years and years and years, a lot of that builds up. And when the lake goes anoxic, that all releases at one time. And so what you get is this large, acute kind of slug of phosphorus that's really the trigger behind a lot of the algal blooms that we see. And so that's where oxygenation helps us to get at close to 65% of the annual phosphorus load with that capital solution. And so it is, not necessarily addressing the upstream sources. It is expected to provide immediate relief from the phosphorus excess that we're seeing in the lake, and allows us kind of more time to get at some of those upstream sources. As Brianne mentioned, we are working with the health department. We'll continue to look at our stormwater in the area, but those solutions are expected to take years, if not decades, according to the modeling. And so the plan kind of recognizing that yes, source control, but we do have a big lever that we can pull with that 65% by turning off the internal loading mechanism.
Well, thank you for adding to that and answering that question. It is a complicated natural system, so thank you very much. Any other questions or remarks? Not seeing any. The motion before us is adoption of Resolution 2024-211. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Herrera.
Aye.
Councilmember Hitchin.
Aye.
Councilmember Morrell.
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell.
Aye.
Councilmember Krueger.
Aye.
Councilmember Denson.
Aye.
Councilmember Mello.
Aye.
The result of the roll call vote is 7 ayes and 0 nays.
On a vote of 7 ayes and 0 nays, the resolution is adopted. Again, thank you to the many community members and residents, especially those that live around the lake, who contribute additional tax dollars to help us improve the quality of the lake, and all the community leaders who put extra effort into helping us lead the significant improvements to Spanaway Lake. There's a lot more to do. Thank you to the staff, and thank you to all those who are involved. It's definitely worth improving. We're at item number 2 here under resolutions. Resolution 2024-220. Vice Chair Campbell, for a motion, please.
Thank you, Chair. I move approval of proposal number R 2024-220.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we adopt resolution 2024-220. Madam Clerk, please read the title.
Proposal number R 2024-220, a resolution of the Pierce County Council approving the 2024 Pierce County Board of Equalization's request to convene to act on timely filed taxpayer petitions which exceed the requirement of Revised Code of Washington 84.48.10.
Thank you. Ms. Long, to brief the council.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So as stated in the title, this approval of this resolution would grant approval to the Board of Equalization for its request to convene to act on timely filed taxpayer petitions that exceed the threshold that's set forth in state law. State law at RCW 8448.0104 provides that the Board of Equalization shall meet on the 15th day of July or within 14 days of certification of the county assessment roll, whichever is later, and may continue in session and adjourn from time to time during a period not to exceed 4 weeks, but must remain in session not less than 3 days. However, the statute provides that the County Board of Equalization, with the approval of the county legislative authority, may convene at any time when petitions exceed 25 or 10% of the number of appeals filed in the preceding year, whichever is greater. So the number of petitions filed with the Board of Equalization during the 2023 assessment year was 1,282. At the time this resolution was written, and you'll see the number in your resolution, the number of petitions filed for 2024 to that point was 1,608. And as of October 14th, which is when rules heard this proposal, the number was up to 1,657. So clearly the threshold has been met and exceeded, and therefore the board has made this request to the council, as we've seen for quite a number of prior years as well. And so the request is to be allowed to continue to meet. That's up to the council because the threshold has been met. The proposal was heard in Rules and Operations on October 14th and did receive a do pass recommendation. And I do see that Kim Shannon is with us online. Kim is the clerk to the Board of Equalization, if you have questions for her.
Thank you, Ms. Long. Kim, is there anything to add on behalf of the Board of Equalization? Go ahead. Kim, you are muted.
No, I don't have anything to add at this time. Thank you.
Well, thank you for making yourself available. Do any council members have any questions before we open up for a public hearing? Not seeing any. This is a public hearing on Resolution 2024-220. There's no members of the public here in council chambers. Mr. Dominique, anybody in the Zoom room for this public hearing?
For any member of the public who is joining us online, please press the raise hand icon in Zoom or *9 on your telephone keypad to provide public comment on proposal number R 2024-220. There are no hands at this time, Chair.
Seeing no hands, we're going to close the public hearing, bring it back to the council. Are there final remarks by council members? Councilmember Hitchin.
Thank you, Chair. I actually came up with a question. I was just formulating it. So is there a cost to appeal to do this process to people?
There is no cost.
Okay.
No.
So for-profit companies from out of state can file hundreds of these at no cost?
That is what we're seeing. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And just to build on what Councilmember Hitchin just said, that's what we learned in committee when we were briefing about this item and considering this item. There's a big workload here in front of the Board of Equalization to contest these property taxes. The vast majority of these appeals are from out-of-state real estate development companies who took ownership of hundreds, if not thousands, of units, and they do have the right to contest all at once, just basically with a stroke of a pen, and can do that. So they're taking advantage of that. It's causing significant work by county staff and community board members who are at the Board of Equalization. So it's not without significant burden and cost to the rest of us taxpayers that this out-of-state real estate developer is doing that. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Denson.
Well, now I do. I wasn't at the Rules Committee, so I wasn't aware of this. Have we done any research into whether this is happening in other counties in Washington, maybe ways other counties are addressing this, best practices? Because clearly this isn't sounding very sustainable for us or fair to our volunteers or the auditor.
Kim?
Well, we are seeing it, across the state. We've seen a larger increase in the last couple of years. And when I say that out of all the appeals that were filed this year, we're seeing about 17 to 20% being just regular taxpayers and the rest being tax agents. I think this is an issue that the assessors will probably need to address at some point. There is a assessors association where the assessors meet each year, and I think that that's probably who needs to address it, since it is appeals of the assessors' assessments.
Thank you. Yeah, it would be great to get their thoughts on what they think we should do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Cruver.
Thank you, Chair. I should probably know this, but is it correct to assume this would require a state fix to the assessors too?
Kim, can you confirm that?
Yes, it would have to be statewide.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
The Board of Equalization is simply following current state law, and we are we're allowing them to take advantage of current state laws. So yes, just for anyone following at home, we're not encouraging this necessarily. We're simply following state law.
I think the laws for the Board of Equalization were originally done, the RCWs are back from the 1960s, and there haven't been very many changes. So,
Thank you, Vice Chair Campbell.
I mean, when you see that the threshold is 25 appeals, you know it's pretty outdated information. I will just say we had a robust conversation in rules, and so if you have any more questions, perhaps go back and watch the rules meeting for, I think we spent almost 30 minutes, really deep dive on it. So with that, I will withhold any other comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Morrell.
Just one quick question, Kim. Are these repeat appeals, or do they just come in one big batch and then the next year they don't appeal? Or are they appealing every year?
Most of the appeals are appealed every year on commercial properties. We do have a new tax agent that has solicited appeals through mailers, and basically they'll send a mailer out to property owners saying, we'll appeal your tax assessment at no cost. If we win that assessment, then they get a percentage of what the difference is for the taxes. And that's, I think they filed well over at least 200 this year, maybe closer to 250. And that's a company they originated out of California, and now they're located in Texas.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or remarks? I'm not seeing any. That does sound like there's some policy improvement work, perhaps, for the next assessor treasurer to help lead on. So we have Resolution 2024-220 before us. The motion is to adopt. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Hitchin.
Aye.
Councilmember Morrell.
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell.
Aye.
Councilmember Krueger.
Aye.
Councilmember Denson. Aye. Councilmember Herrera.
Aye.
Councilmember Mello.
Aye.
The results of the roll call vote is 7 ayes and 0 nays.
On the vote of 7 ayes and 0 nays, the resolution is adopted. We're at Section 9, ordinances. There are none today. Then that moves us to Section 10, Community Forum. Community Forum is an opportunity for members of the public to address the council on any topic that is of significance to or affecting Pierce County government and that did not appear on today's agenda for final action. There's a 3-minute time limit. Please state your name if you would like it on the record, and please address all your comments to the chair. There's no members of the public here in council chambers, so we're going to move to the Zoom room for Community Forum. Mr. Dominique.
For any member of the public that would like to participate in Community Forum this evening that is joining us online, please press the raise hand icon in Zoom or *9 on your telephone keypad. There are no hands at this time, Chair.
With no hands, we're going to close Community Forum. We're going to move on to Section 11, Other Business and Announcements. Is there any other business or announcements by council members? Not seeing any. Ms. Long, is there any other business for council this evening?
Nothing from staff, thank you.
With no other business before the Pierce County Council, we are adjourned.